Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome. I welcome you all to this lecture in the course Sandhi in Paninian Grammar. We have been studying Ach Sandhi or vowel Sandhi for some time now. We stated that Ach Sandhi can be broadly classified into two. The first one being Ekasthanika Ekadesha, where we have Eka Sthani and Eka Adesha, one substituent and one substitute. So one substitute replacing one substituent. This is the first type of Ach Sandhi. We also stated that there are two instances of this type of Ach Sandhi, and they are Ikoyanachi and Ichoyavayavaha. These are the two sutras stating Yan Sandhi and Ayavayav Sandhi. Then we said that the second classification is Dvisthanika Ekadesha, where you have two substituents and one substitute. This we shall study soon. Right now, we are concentrated on the second instance of Ekasthanika Ekadesha, which is Ayavayav Sandhi. We have already studied in detail Yan Sandhi. In the process, we studied the sutra Ikoyanachi, which states this Yan Sandhi. We understood the meaning of the words in the sutra. We also introduced the Uddeshya Vidheya Bhava and studied the Anudit Savarnasya Chapratyaha Sutra, and then we studied examples of Yan Sandhi. Then we also studied the concept of Sthanivad Bhava, and finally the gap that is filled in by the later Paninian grammatical tradition. Then we moved to Ichoyavayavaha. We studied the sutra. We also studied the Uddeshya Vidheya Bhava. And then we also studied various examples. Many of such examples we noted are artificial, but there is nothing that we can do about it. Now, Ekasthanika Ekadesha type of Ach Sandhi is stated in this particular section in the Ashtadhyayi 6.172 onwards up to 6.183. The Ekasthanika Ekadesha can be diagrammatically represented in this manner, where you have A immediately followed by B. They are both in the Samhita mode, in the close proximity. So A plus B becomes the input, and now this A gets substituted by C. A is the substituent, C is the substitute. A is the Sthani, C is the Adesha. In the environment of A immediately followed by B, A gets substituted by C. So A plus B is the input and the output is C plus B. In the Ayavayava Sandhi, in this lecture, we shall study some additional rules stated in this particular section to make the description of Ayavayava Sandhi exhaustive enough. We saw that the main sutra that states the Ayavayava Sandhi is Icho Yavayavaha 6178. This consists of two words, Echaha being the sixth one of H, meaning thereby that in place of H, Ayavayavaha is 1/3 of Ayavayav. The word Achi continues from the previous sutra, and so the meaning of this sutra is immediately before H is substituted by Ayavayav. We also studied that H is a pratyahara formed capturing the sounds in Sutra 4 and 5 of the Pratyahara Sutras. These sounds are A, O, I and Au. And we also have 4 substitutes I, Av, I and Av. We have studied several examples illustrating this particular sutra. Now we need to study the additional sutras, and there are 4 in number. In this lecture we shall study the first 2, and in the next lecture we shall study the remaining 2 and some other topic. Vanto yip pratyaye 6179, dhatos tannimittasyaiva 6180. These 2 we shall study now. We will keep kshaya jayau shakyarthe and krayastadarte for the next lecture. What is the purpose of these additional sutras? So we have studied that the general sutra states the substitute in the environment of a vowel on the right hand side. However, there are cases in the usage where the substitute takes place even when the right hand environment in the form of a vowel does not exist. Which means that there are cases where this particular substitute stated by this sutra takes place when the right hand side environment is a consonant. And these additional sutras are stated to capture such cases. This is the primary purpose of these additional sutras, and also to capture these substitutes in certain specific environments. That is also an additional purpose of stating these additional sutras. Let us now study Vanto yip pratyaye 6179. There are 3 words in the sutra. Vantaha, which is 1 of Vanta, meaning a substitute ending in va anta, Vanta. A substitute ending in va. That substitute takes place. Yi is 7/1 of consonant y, which means literally immediately before y, immediately before the sound y. Pratyaye is 7/1 of pratyaya, meaning immediately before a suffix. Words continued from the previous sutra are echaha, from the previous sutra echo yavayavaha 6178, and echaha means in place of h. Now you see achi does not continue here, obviously because it is cancelled by yi, which is in the same case 7/1. So now the right hand environment is changed. Previously achi was the right hand side environment, and now it is going to be only y, which is a consonant which does not come under ach. Ach means all vowels, this is a consonant, and that is why this particular sutra is stated. Now here we also need to study one paribhasha in order to clearly understand 6179. The issue is this, see ye is 7-1 and pratyaya is also 7-1. So both the words are in the same cases, and when such a situation arises, the words have the qualifier qualified relationship, visheshana visheshya bhava. So in this case pratyaya can be the qualified visheshya and ye can be the visheshana, the qualifier. So ye pratyaya then stands for, following the general maxim that a visheshana always stands for the visheshananta, the word ending in that visheshana. So ye can stand for the word ending in year by default by the sutra yena vidhis tadantasya. But in this case this does not apply because of one paribhasha stated in the tradition, yasmin vidhis tadadau al-grahane. What this means is an individual sound which is mentioned as a qualifier and also as a right hand side environment stands for or qualifies as the beginning sound of that right hand side environment. I will read it once again. An individual sound mentioned as a qualifier and also as a right hand side environment stands for or qualifies for as the beginning sound of that right hand side environment and not as the end sound of that right hand side environment. This is the meaning of this paribhasha. Al, which is 7/1, which means immediately before a sound. This means immediately before an element that begins with that al, that is aladi. So if you take any sound and add 7/1 to it and it is a qualifier of something, then this ali does not mean alanta, it means aladi. So immediately before any sound means an element that begins with that particular sound. So in this case ye and pratyaya, they are in same cases. So ye is the qualifier of pratyaya. So what both these words mean is immediately before the suffix, that is the meaning of pratyaya. Now how does ye qualify? It qualifies by saying immediately before the suffix that begins with consonant here. So yadi, yakaradi or yakaradau pratyaya. That seems to be the meaning of ye pratyaya. Immediately before the suffix beginning with consonant here. This is the meaning arrived at of these two words by the application of this particular paribhasha yasmin vidhis tadadau al-grahane, which is an exception to the general rule stated in the Ashtadhyayi, namely yena vidhis tadantasya. Now after having applied this paribhasha, the meaning of 6179 is clear to us, and that meaning is this: immediately before a suffix beginning with the consonant year, substitute appropriate h by a substitute ending in v, that is av and our as the substitutes. They should come in place of o and au, which are part of h, and these av and au are the only two substitutes that end in v, and they are the substitutes which come in place of only o and au respectively. So this particular sutra applies to o and au as substituents and not a and I, which is also part of h. This is clear because of the word vanta, which means a substitute ending in v. Now the substitute ending in v can come in place of only o and au and not in place of a and I. So now, to show the meaning of this sutra in the form of an equation, we can say that if O is followed by Y as a suffix and Y is the beginning part of this suffix, then the resultant output after the application of 6179 over here would be av plus Y consonant and the suffix that begins with Y. So O plus Y dot dot is the input, 6179 applies, and av plus Y dot dot is the output. Y is the beginning of the pratyaya. Similarly, if you have au plus Y dot dot as the input, 6179 applies, this Y is the beginning of the pratyaya, and so we have au plus Y dot dot as the output. Remember, 6178 needs a vowel as a right hand side environment. 6179 specifically deals with a non-vowel, namely a consonant, but not any consonant, only Y consonant, and that too should be the beginning of the suffix. Only then this substitution takes place. Let us look at the examples. The first example is of the word gavya, and this is derived in the following way. In the sense of modification or product, vikara or avayava or a part, the suffix ya, originally stated as yat in the Ashtadhyayi, is added to the words go and payas by the sutra go payasor yat 4.3.160. And so the derivation would go like this. So we have go followed by ya, stated yat originally. What this means is the modification or a product or a part of go. Go is a cow. So now there is this O followed by ya. So O is followed by a pratyaya that begins with the consonant ya, and therefore 6179 applies, and this O is substituted by av, and so the resultant output generated is gav plus ya. When joined together, this becomes gavya, which means modification or a product of a cow or part of a cow is what is gavya. Similarly, let us look at the second example. In the sense of something that can be crossed, the suffix ya, once again originally stated as yat with the marker ta, is added to the word nau ending in au by the sutra nau vayo dharma etc. This is 4.4.91. So we have nau followed by ya, and you have actually au, which is immediately followed by a pratyaya which begins with consonant ya, and so 6179 applies, and the output generated is nav plus ya, and when we join together it becomes navya, something that can be crossed by a ship. So we are talking about a river, for example, or some water, navya, nadi, and so on. This is how vantoye pratyaye can be explained. Now let us go to the second sutra, which is dhatos tannimittasyaiva, which is 6180. Now let us look at the meaning of 6180. This sutra has got three words. The first one is dhatos, which is 61 of the word dhatu. Dhatu means a verbal root. So dhatos means of a verbal root. Tan nimittasya is the 6/1 of Tannimitta. Tannimitta is a compound constituted by two elements, Tat and Nimitta. Nimitta is a condition, Tat is that. So, Tannimitta stands for conditioned by that. This is describing the part of the dhatu. Dhatos, which is genitive, we said means of a verbal root. This stands for part of the verbal root, as shall be clear in a while. Eva is indeclinable and generally eva is rendered by the word only. The words continued are echaha, 6/1 of h in place of h. This is from echoyavayavaha, 6178, and the entire sutra vantoyu pratyaye from 6179. The substitute ending in va takes place immediately before a suffix that begins with a consonant ya. Now putting all these things together, now we link this dhatoho with echaha. So h is part of the dhatu. And so the meaning is, immediately before a suffix that begins with the consonant ya, if any h of a verbal root takes the substitute ending in consonant va, it is only that h which is conditioned by that suffix beginning with ya. So from this rendering, and because of the word eva in the sutra, we come to know that this is a niyama sutra, which is a restatement and therefore a negation through a positive statement. The meaning of the sutra is once again, immediately before a suffix that begins with the consonant ya, if at all any h of a verbal root takes the substitute ending in consonant va, so av and av, it is only that h which is conditioned by that particular suffix. So this h should have come in place in the dhatu because of this particular suffix that begins with ya, and only such h can be substituted by av and av respectively. So every condition for this rule to apply is stated by earlier rules, and still this rule is stated. So this becomes a restatement and results in a negation. The meaning of this sutra once again is, if an h of the verbal root which is not conditioned by the suffix beginning with ya is followed immediately by that suffix, the substitute ending in va does not take place. This is the negation. I repeat, the negation which is resulted by the restatement in 6180 is the following. If an h of the verbal root which is not conditioned by the suffix beginning with ya and is followed immediately by that suffix, the substitute ending in va does not take place. Here are the examples. First of all, let us look at the examples where the substitute av and av has taken place, and this o and au that is conditioned by the following suffix ya. Here are the examples. So we begin with the verbal root lu, lu meaning to cut, and add to it the suffix ya by 3197. Now this ya suffix brings about the substitution of o in place of u over here. So we get lo plus ya by the application of the sutra 7384. Lo plus ya. Remember, this o is brought about because of this ya. So this o is conditioned by ya. Now such a vowel o is substituted by av when the suffix beginning with ya is the immediate right hand side environment. So now we substitute O by av and we get the form love, year, love, year by 6180, love, year. Now the most important point to remember over here is O is conditioned by year. Similarly, you have lu, verbal root meaning to cut, followed by the suffix year, this time stated by another sutra 31125. The original suffix stated by this sutra is nyat. So this rna marker brings about the substitution of au in place of u. So you have au, love plus year. Remember, this love is brought about by this suffix year. So this love is conditioned by year, and so such an au is substituted by av. So we have love plus year, and so finally we get the form love, year. The most important point to remember over here is that au is conditioned by year. Even though we have stated that this av substitution is brought about by 6180, this is actually not the particular example of this particular sutra, because as we said, this is a positive statement and results in negation. So the negative element, negative example can be cited as the example of 6180. That is what 6180 blocks. That is what 6180 does not allow to get generated. And here are those examples. First one is oyate and the second one is auyata. And oyate is the passive present tense of the verbal root vey, tantu santane, to weave. So we have the preverb a followed by ve plus let, then you have ve plus the, then you add the suffix year in between. So ve, year, te, and this ta becomes te. Then there is samprasarana which substitutes va by u. So you have u and a remains as it is. So u a plus year plus te, and then this u and a is substituted by this u. So you have u plus year plus te. Remember, this year is a suffix, and now we have this a and this u, and the sandhi o happens. So this o comes immediately before year. But remember, this o is not conditioned by this year, because this a and u, they are coming together. They don't need the year following. Once you have a immediately followed by u in the samhita mode, they both get substituted by one o by the sutra adgunaha, and so you have o. So this o is not conditioned by year, and so now the sutra 6180 says that in such a case don't substitute this o by our. So 6180 prohibits substitution of o by our in this case, and so we get the form oyate and not something undesired. Similarly, we have auyata, which is the passive imperfect past tense of the verbal root ve, once again meaning to weave, and this is the derivation process. Ve plus lung, a plus ve plus lung, a plus ve plus the, a plus ve plus year plus the. This year is the suffix which indicates the passive voice. Now because of this year, once again there is this samprasarana substitution, verb becoming u. So you have a plus u a year and the, and then in place of u and a we have one substitution u. So you have a plus u plus year plus the. Once again a and u, they get changed to au, and so you have au plus year plus the. Now this au is not conditioned by this year. That is the most important point. Even though year follows, this au is not conditioned by year, and therefore this au is not substituted by av. 6180 prohibits au being substituted by av, And so we get the desired form avyata, and the undesired forms are not generated because of the application of this niyama sutra. So the explanation is, in the forms oyate, something that is being woven, and avyata, something that was being woven, o and au are followed by a suffix which begins with ya. Alright, but o and au are not conditioned by that particular suffix beginning with ya, and hence o and au are not replaced by the substitute that ends in va, namely ava and ava respectively. This is the meaning and the explanation of 6180 dhatostan nimittasya. To summarize what we have studied so far, we studied two specific sutras stating particular substitute in specific environment, which is right hand side environment. We also studied the meta rule needed in interpreting the sutras in this particular regard. We studied the sutra of the niyama type as well, which is a positive statement, however results in negation, and we identified the scope that is negated through this positive statement. And now we study in the next lecture some exceptions of the general rule echo yavayavaha and ayavayav sandhi. Thank you very much.